Welcome back to yet another video on leveling. Before we get started, I just want to make clear that the methods I'm using in these videos to level and get this data is not what you need to do. You don't have to have 14 characters, you don't have to have a full group. The only thing we're trying to figure out is the fastest way to level and how to make that happen. So for example, the last video on AA, we found that grouping a level 51 through 65 with 5 other 65s, that at level 64 they got the most AA per kill. The only thing that you need to take from that is that level 64 turned out to be the fastest AA gain in that scenario. Whatever you do with that is on you, whether you play solo at 64, whether you group, box, whatever it is may be. So the only thing we're doing in this video is collecting the experience rate for 1 through 6 players in a group. So as you add people to your group, there's experience bonuses that get added to the group, but how does that pan out when it comes to power leveling? Obviously, the reason that you build a full group is because you're able to kill faster. But if you're power leveling yourself, how big your group is really doesn't matter because you have outside characters assisting. So we want to put the people that need the experience, and it could be 6. You maybe have 6 characters that all need experience, but toward the end of these expansions here, I'm finding myself, for example, I made a Berserker. Well, I don't really have any of my other 13, 14 characters don't need experience. They don't need any more AA. They pretty much have everything that they need. And it's more important to get, that Berserker, all the basics and everything that it needs. What I want to look at is how much quicker is the experience based off how many members you have in a group. So I did this test without any experience bonuses. Again, we're in Plane of Fire because that's where the most consistent high-level mobs are. The mobs are level 68 in C2. Hands down, every mob except the name. So that's where I like the test because it's consistent. And looking at this chart, we can see here how the experience turns out with only 1 character. I was getting 15.31 AA per kill. 2 was at 9.186. And so forth. The interesting thing was when you had 3 and 4 characters, there's almost no experience difference. So having 3 or 4 didn't really matter. Having 5 was actually the lowest experience gain, and then having 6 with that full group bonus or the added character or whatever, actually the experience went up just a little bit. So it looks like the worst group formation is going to be having 5 characters if you're looking for experience rate. And then between 3 and 4, it doesn't matter. So if you recall, the way experience works in EverQuest is whoever does the most damage gets credit for the kill. And the damage is combined if you're in a group or if you're in a raid. So when I power level characters, I may have, I got 4 Rangers, I got a Berserker, a Monk, Warrior, Paladin, and some other caster classes, and what I do is I leave them ungrouped. So even though some of the melee characters might be doing 300 to 500 DPS just auto attacking, because they're ungrouped, it's easy for me to combine a few characters with the power level E, or the character I'm power leveling, and beat all the other DPS outside of it. So as long as my little group, or sometimes full group if I need 6 characters, beats all the individual damage of the ungrouped characters, you get full credit. So where that becomes a problem is when you have a new 65, even with the gear, unless you have some really shitty classes or you're gonna kind of wait a little bit before attacking, it's really hard for that solo 65 to out DPS all of your other characters. Like, it's just not gonna happen, So I got a Berserker with pretty much best of slot gear. I got Rangers, wielding the new gates, one-handed weapons. So for a new level 65 monk to out DPS them by himself, it's not gonna happen. There are ways to keep him solo. If you kill enough consistently with the same setup, you'll start to pick up on, does my monk or my new character, does it, if I turn everybody else's attack on it at 90%, so say I let my main character on power leveling do 10% of the damage up front, and I turn everybody else's attack on, does he get credit for the kill? And you can experiment with that. Maybe at 95% you can turn all the other DPS on. Maybe you have to beat it down to 50% or 55% in order for the character power leveling to get experience. You can experiment with that route. That to me is a bottleneck, and it will kind of slow you down because you want to be able to jump in and just DPS. So even though you're getting the most experience solo at level 65, when you have a new character like that, and especially if you don't have a DPS character, like maybe you're leveling a cleric or something like that, you're probably gonna have to go with a 2-man group, which is still, it's still a 9.186 on here, which is still, over a 6-man group. It's 50% faster than a 6-man group per kill, and your kill rate's not affected because everybody's still doing the same DPS outside the group. But if I were to say combine the Berserker with the Monk in a group, none of the other characters individually are going to outdamage that group. If it's a caster, you take your highest DPS class, group it with the caster, and if you're having problems consistently getting the last kill, then what you'll do is off the caster, you might have to drop a few nukes or something, even if it's a cleric, just a little bit extra damage so that you're always getting that kill. Another interesting thing that I looked at, now if we use the data I collected in the last video about which level yields the most experience, which we found out to be level 64 when grouped at level 65s, if we apply that same theory, I've actually adjusted the experience here, as you can see in this chart. So a level 64 solo in Plane of Fire should get just over 20% AA per kill. Now, that's like fine and dandy, but there's no way fathomable with the setup I have that it's going to be worthwhile for a level 64 to try to out DPS all the other characters. I mean, you're literally going to have to use a 64 with bad gear and just beat on this mob for probably far too long, where if you didn't have to, you know, have this level 64 take the mob down to like 60% health before all the other characters assist, even though you're getting 20%, if you look with a two-man group with a 64, you should be getting about 12% AA. So I would probably do a two-man group so that you can start DPSing right away. You know, take my level 65 Zerker, put it with level 64 Monk, and then, you know, I'm getting 12% per kill. So the way that I run my group, and you do not have to do this, you don't even have to try to do this, we're literally just collecting data on what is the fastest level and the fastest group setup to level. That's it. You can use it however you want, but in my setup, I actually have, and this works pretty well for Stormy Temples and the Gates of Discord because it gets a little rough, and Kataz or whatever, but it's a Cleric, Shaman, Bard, Paladin, and the Enchanter all in one group. Because and what I do with that is I control the mobs, so I will tank for these outside groups, and the characters are power leveling. So I will maintain all the aggro. They're going to outdamage that 6-man group because it's literally just healers and support crew. And a Bard that really doesn't do that much damage anyway, so as long as they can outdamage the Bard and the Paladin, and I don't even have to turn the Bard melee on if I don't want to, but as long as they outdamage that group, they get experience. So if you think about what a raid-geared Paladin tank with a Shaman in the group, an Enchanter, a Bard who's playing, you know, Reflect and Rune songs, plus 2 Clerics, like, I can literally run in anywhere, and I can sit there and I can group heal off both Clerics and off the Paladin, and I actually picked up the AE Mez, and I mean, it's just the Bard can AE slow. You won't really die. It's hard to die in that type of group setup. So that's the main group that I run around with, pulling the mobs, and then when I power level, I have the outside groups DPS and they get the experience or credit for doing nothing than just the DPS. That's the way I do it to control mobs, but there's things you could do. You could if you had a high-level Enchanter, you could use, even in Plane of Fire, you could charm a pet and do a 2-man group with the character you're power leveling. That would be pretty fast. So, I mean, you got to get kind of creative what you're going to do with the information, but I just seen in the comments before that someone was like, well, this video is not helpful unless you have 5 level 65s. Like look, the level 65s I use are just to collect the data rapidly. And that's how I do it because it's fastest. So you don't have to play 12, 15 characters. You don't have to play a full group. Like I said in response, like take your you know, if you have a level 64 and it's your only character, just know, lock your character at 64. Don't ding 65 and see if you can get in some groups. Maybe it's hard to get in groups, you know, because people don't want level 64, but if you can, or if you have a main character and that's your box character, you know, to say you'll help out a group with your main character if they let your level 64 sit in the group. And another thing that is creative too, having realized, you know, the actual real, like, I mean, we always kind of knew solo experience was more, but I never really sat down and did percentage-wise. Like, if you look at these charts here, I mean, a level 64 solo at getting, you know, over 20% AA per kill compared to a level 65 in a group at 6%, you know, that's over 300% faster. So something that takes, you know, 100 hours, you know, if you're gonna grind AA for 100 hours, you know, and get 500 AA, that may only take you 30 hours, 33 hours, you know, a third of that if you do it this way. And even if you get to 65 and you're at 12%, you know, that's still almost double the speed. So, you know, it's 86% faster maybe. But having your level 64 doubled even is significantly faster. And I mean, if it takes you 100 hours to get 500 AA, It might only take 60 in that setup. But to utilize this data now, there's people that do 43 to 65 or 40 to 60 AFK power level, we call it. You might want to seriously consider saying, hey, I want you to power level just me. So they'll usually have like a bard, and they'll try to get 5 people because that's how they make the money. But maybe you can get them to do some type of deal where maybe you pay double rate or triple rate or whatever, and it's just you and their bard, and you're just going to gain experience so rapid that it might actually save you some money in the long run. You'll have to do the math and figure out how much more experience you're getting just being grouped with their bard or whatever they're using. It's usually a bard, versus them having a full group, and maybe you can pay them just a little bit more, but you'll get your character leveled up faster, and it'll cost you less money in the long run. So that's one way you can use the data. But that's why we're doing this, because playing since live servers back in, I don't know when I started, 2099, pretty much whenever it came out, we kind of knew, solo is awesome, you get more experience with playing too, but I've never actually sat down and put it into a spreadsheet, and that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to figure out fastest level in the last video, but now what type of group makeup can we get away with is realistic. Can we do a solo? Probably not. Can we do two-man? Two-man's pretty doable. If you got to use 3, use 3. It's still going to be a little bit faster. You're at 7.14 versus 6.6, so it's a little bit faster. But that's become so minuscule at that point where maybe you're like, I'll just use a full group and get some extra experience in my other characters. But there is definitely merit between going solo and duo grouping for experience. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the information. And once again, you do not have to do what I'm doing in here. What I'm doing here is a little overboard and extreme, and sometimes we are going 60 and 55 with some of the methods I use, but it's all for you, right? So now it's not like I'm keeping the information to myself. And if there's something else that you want me to test that maybe you can't test because you're curious, because I have all the characters, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'll see if I can get to it. Maybe the next video will be something that you want to see done. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this information.